My dear chosen one, imagine discovering that the betrayal you went through was never really about love, but about disruption. She didn't enter his life to love him. She entered to shake your foundation. Because your light intimidated her shadows. She didn't envy your relationship. She envied your spiritual authority. And when she couldn't compete with your essence, she tried to steal the person who reflected your divine union, hoping to fracture you from within. What she didn't understand is that what you shared with him wasn't emotional dependency. It was divine alignment, and no human intervention, no matter how seductive or strategic, has the power to dismantle a union that was established in the spirit long before it manifested in the physical. At first, it looked like you had lost everything. You cried in silence, watching someone else take the place that once felt sacred. And while they celebrated their illusion of victory, heaven remained silent, but not absent. What many called abandonment was actually divine protection, the kind that pulls you out of danger before the threat fully reveals itself. What they mistook for weakness in you was actually obedience. You didn't fight to keep what was stolen because your soul knew that whatever is forged by manipulation will collapse without your intervention. And while they played games in the flesh, God was realigning your destiny in the spirit. Before we continue, I want to speak to your courage. If you have ever felt the pain of being betrayed not by love but by envy, write in the comments right now the number 777 to spiritually declare that no one can destroy what God protects, and no loss can erase what heaven has written. While we are at it, I have a special request. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, because today we expose the illusion and claim the divine union that no darkness can ever touch. She didn't want him. She wanted your collapse. There was something about the way you carried yourself, something about your resilience, your grace under pressure, your divine favor, that made her feel exposed. So instead of facing her own emptiness, she targeted what you loved most, hoping that by taking him, she could take you down. But what she failed to understand is that your identity was never rooted in who stood beside you. It was rooted in the one who walks within you. When someone tries to sabotage a divine union, they don't just war against people. They war against heaven's design. And because that union was spiritual before it was romantic, the moment she interfered, she touched something sacred. She believed that stealing his attention would give her your anointing. She assumed that if she could replicate your presence, she could access your favor. But the presence of the chosen one is not something that can be mimicked. It's cultivated in the fire, tested through loss, and sealed through obedience. So even though she stands next to him now, she remains tormented. Because what she took cannot settle in her hands. What was stolen outside of divine order cannot produce peace. Meanwhile, you've been healing in silence. You've been wrestling with confusion, wondering if somehow this was your fault. If maybe you weren't enough, or if you should have fought harder to keep him. But in truth, you were never supposed to compete for what was already ordained. When someone is truly yours by divine appointment, you don't have to chase. You only have to walk in alignment. His departure didn't mark your rejection. It revealed his unreadiness. And her intrusion didn't crown her. It exposed her desperation. And now, their union is haunted by everything it tried to bury. You've probably felt the echoes, random dreams, emotional flashbacks, spiritual weight that hits out of nowhere. That's because the bond was never just emotional. It was covenantal. A connection like that doesn't dissolve quietly. It stirs in the unseen. And while they might pretend everything is perfect, the spiritual disruption is undeniable. Because what started in sabotage cannot end in stability. What was fueled by ego will always drain the soul. And no matter how much she tries to imitate what you carried, your spiritual essence cannot be replicated. It can only be divinely released. This is why she watches you. She pretends to have won, but she's still tracking your presence, your growth, your light. Not because she admires you, but because she envies the peace you still carry, even after everything. Your very existence reminds her that she didn't win. She just interfered. And now that he's with her, she realizes she didn't receive a prize. She inherited a war, a soul that was incomplete, a man who still carries your imprint, and a spirit that never truly transitioned out of the promise it once held with you. You. See, when a union is forged by heaven, it's not easily replaced. The bond may be broken in action, but the residue remains. You're not imagining things when you feel pulled or suddenly heavy. You're sensing the aftershocks of a disruption in the spirit. But here's the truth that sets you free. Just because it was once sacred doesn't mean you're still required to carry it. Some covenants were broken by the choices of others, and your only responsibility now is to release what no longer reflects God's will. You were faithful to your part, and that's all heaven ever required. There is a reason why you are still standing. A reason why, even after heartbreak, betrayal, and humiliation, your light has not dimmed. It's because your connection with God was never dependent on who stayed. It was rooted in who you are when no one's clapping, when no one's validating, when you are left alone with your faith. That's where your royalty was formed. That's why the divine marriage, the spiritual union between your soul and your purpose, remains untouched. Because what they tried to steal was never just about a relationship. It was about your destiny. And destiny cannot be hijacked. The man who walked away didn't walk into peace. He walked into a performance. And she, the one who claimed him, is now carrying the weight of a role she was never anointed to fill. There is no joy in pretending to be someone's destiny. There is no fulfillment in possessing a body whose spirit is somewhere else. And now, whether she admits it or not, she feels the tension. Because no matter how much she decorates the outside, she cannot silence the inner void that keeps reminding her. She took what was never hers, and now she's bound to it. You, on the other hand, are being called into a higher alignment. What felt like a detour was actually a divine redirection. Heaven allowed the interference so that you would no longer settle for potential. You would no longer build altars for people still entertaining idols. This heartbreak wasn't a punishment. It was a protection. Because if you had stayed connected to someone not yet submitted to God, the fallout would have cost you your purpose. And now that you're standing alone, you are finally strong enough to see clearly. They didn't leave you. They left their covering. When a person is spiritually disconnected, their decisions become reactive instead of redemptive. He didn't choose her because he loved her more. He chose her because his wounds aligned with her strategies. She offered escape, not elevation. She mirrored his avoidance, not his assignment. And in that mirror, they now face each other, empty-handed. Because nothing born out of deception can grow without decay. And no matter how far he tries to run, your absence whispers louder than her presence ever will. He didn't just lose you, he lost what he was becoming with you. You might still feel that lingering ache, that pull that questions whether any of it was real. But the ache is not a sign that you should return. It's a reminder that something sacred was violated. And while your heart still holds the memory, your spirit is done grieving, because grief only lasts where hope still lingers. But once you recognize that the sacred was shattered by the choices of others, you stop begging for closure. You begin to understand that the real healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from detachment, from reclaiming your peace, regardless of who regrets. This is why your glow unsettles them, why your silence echoes in places they thought were safe. Because even without him, even after the betrayal, you are still chosen, still rising, still walking with grace. And while she watches, hoping to see you fall, she's forced to confront the truth. Her possession of him didn't erase your impact. She took the man, but not the mantle. She broke the bond, but not the blessing. And now, her joy is counterfeit, her victory hollow, because what she claimed was never sustained by divine design. He will eventually see it too, not through punishment, but through reflection. As life begins to unravel what was built on falsehood, he'll remember the difference between pleasure and purpose, between lust and loyalty, between being wanted and being aligned. And while that realization may come too late to repair the damage, it will be just in time to confront the truth. He wasn't just called to love you, he was called to build something eternal with you. And he forfeited that calling when he let envy sit at the table. But you, chosen one, were never meant to compete. Your role was never to beg for what was already yours in spirit. Your path is not defined by the ones who left, but by the one who never did. And while they walk in confusion, you are walking in clarity. While they perform love, you are embodying peace. And that is why the divine marriage, the sacred union between your soul and your purpose, remains untouched. Because even if the people shift, the promise remains. Even if the cast changes, the script of your calling continues. She's starting to feel the consequences, not because God is punishing her, but because spiritual law cannot be bypassed. When someone touches what is sacred with carnal motives, they initiate a collapse from within. And now that the initial thrill has faded, she's left with the weight of what she's done. No matter how much she tries to convince herself that she won, her spirit knows otherwise. There's a restlessness inside her that no affection can soothe, no attention can calm, because deep down, her soul knows it hijacked a role it was never prepared to carry, and it's crumbling under the pressure. There's a reason she still watches you. She needs to see if you've truly recovered, if your light still shines, if the spiritual flame she tried to extinguish still burns, and what she sees disturbs her. Because despite the betrayal, despite the isolation, despite the tears you've cried behind closed doors, you're still glowing. You're still chosen. You're still standing in the authority she thought she could dismantle. That's what haunts her now. Not your words, not your revenge, but your resilience. Because it proves that she never had power over you, only over the illusion of loss. He senses it too, though he may never admit it. There's an unspoken tension every time your name is mentioned, an unease when your energy is felt. Because his spirit remembers the purity of what you shared. And while his mind tries to stay committed to the present, his soul still reaches backward, wondering what he walked away from. This inner conflict grows louder with time, especially as the fruit of his new connection starts to rot. And eventually, he'll be forced to acknowledge what heaven knew all along. He was never supposed to be taken from you. He was supposed to grow beside you. But you don't need his apology to heal. You don't need her downfall to rise. Your Elevation is not conditional. It's inevitable, because your healing is rooted in obedience, not revenge. You chose to release when you could have retaliated. You chose to trust God when you could have chased answers. And that's why you're rising now, because you did what most can't. You let go of what hurt you without letting it harden you. And that posture of grace, that unwavering faith, is what heaven honors most. That's why restoration is finding you in unexpected ways. And yes, sometimes it hurts to heal in silence. Sometimes you wish they could see the tears you never showed, the nights you cried yourself back to life. But heaven saw it all, and that was enough. You weren't healing for them. You were healing for you, for your future, for the generations that will come after you. And every moment you chose peace instead of proving your pain, you were sowing seeds of honor. Seeds that now are breaking through the ground as undeniable favor. You didn't need the crowd. You didn't need the apology. You didn't need validation. Because while they underestimated your silence, God was amplifying your authority. He was cultivating a strength in you that doesn't shout, but shifts atmospheres. A wisdom that doesn't retaliate, but redirects. And now, that quiet obedience is echoing louder than any accusation ever could. You weren't just being quiet. You were being positioned, prepared, protected. And that's why what's coming can't be touched by those who mishandled your past. They had a chance to walk with you, and they chose ego. They chose confusion. But you chose truth, and truth never returns void. Now, you carry a peace that confuses your enemies and a power that heaven has sealed. This isn't about payback. It's about purpose. And as purpose unfolds, it exposes every false narrative spoken about you, not with words, but with undeniable divine transformation. The tables are turning, not because you demanded it, but because heaven never sleeps. The same ones who thought they broke, you are now watching you step into realms they were never invited to. And it's not about proving them wrong, it's about proving God right. He said he would vindicate you, and he is. Not through drama, but through destiny. Not through confrontation, but through elevation. And the higher you rise, the more they realize. You were never just a lover. You were a leader, a light bearer, a vessel of sacred purpose. So don't look back. Don't scroll through old photos hoping for closure. Don't listen for footsteps in case someone's returning. What's ahead of you is greater than anything you lost. You're not waiting for restoration. You are the restoration. You're not hoping for reconciliation. You're living in redemption. This is the season where God is showing everyone who you really are. And while they whisper about your past, heaven is announcing your future. The shift is already happening, and it's unstoppable. You are not defined by what was stolen. You are not marked by who left. You are crowned by who stayed, and that was God. Through every betrayal, every breakdown, every attempt to bury you, He stayed. And that's why the divine marriage still stands. Not the one between you and a person, but the one between your soul and your purpose. That is what she couldn't touch. That is what he couldn't destroy. And that is why you are rising now. Not because they returned, but because you never left your covenant with God. Even now, there's a spiritual war happening behind the scenes, and you can feel it. Random heaviness, sudden memories, unexpected spiritual interference. It's not nostalgia. It's not weakness. It's a sign that what tried to keep you bound is still reaching, still searching, still grasping for a connection that no longer exists. She didn't just want to take him. She wanted to anchor your soul in grief. She wanted to keep you watching, wondering, doubting. But what she didn't realize is that every moment you chose peace over performance, silence over retaliation, you were severing the last strings of her control. This is why you feel lighter, why your discernment has sharpened, why your dreams are clearer. You're not crazy. You're delivered. You're no longer entangled in the emotional fog of confusion. You're no longer questioning your value based on someone else's blindness. And while they're busy trying to recreate what they broke, heaven is writing a new story for you. One that isn't built on pain, but on power. You're not a chapter in their drama anymore. You're a whole new book. And only those aligned with your purpose will have access to read it. Don't be surprised if he tries to return. Don't be shocked if she suddenly wants peace. What they're feeling isn't reconciliation, it's conviction. What they're chasing isn't you, it's what you carried. Because now that they've tasted the counterfeit, they finally recognize the value of the authentic. But remember this, just because someone regrets losing you doesn't mean they're ready to walk with you. Guilt is not growth. And if you reopen doors that heaven closed, you invite chaos that grace had already removed. And here's the hardest part. The temptation to entertain their return doesn't come because you're weak. It comes because you still care. But caring doesn't mean compromising. Forgiveness doesn't mean re-entry. Your heart has matured, and with that maturity comes a higher standard. You're no longer available for emotional roulette. You're not here to be a rehab for souls who had access and chose chaos. Your healing costs too much to gamble it for closure. You don't need another apology. You need alignment. God is not asking you to hate them. He's asking you to protect what He's been cultivating in you. To recognize that this new version of you requires new boundaries, new clarity, new vision. You're not punishing anyone by moving forward. You're honoring the process that birthed your wisdom. This is what spiritual growth looks like. Not needing to prove, to explain, or to revisit. You're not who you were when they broke you. You're not even who you were last week. And that scares them, because they can't access what they no longer understand. So when the message comes, or the energy shifts, or the pull resurfaces, pause, breathe. Remember, this is not the universe testing you. This is heaven trusting you, trusting that you'll choose legacy over longing, purpose over pattern, freedom over familiarity. Because where God is taking you, recycled cycles can't follow. And if you needed a sign, this is it. You don't need to go back to prove. You've healed. You prove it by walking forward, with peace in your soul and fire in your eyes. You were called to rise above this cycle, to break the pattern, to be the first in your lineage who doesn't settle for emotional crumbs just to feel seen. This betrayal wasn't about losing love. It was about reclaiming your identity. Every tear, every heartbreak, every silent night was heaven's way of stripping you of dependency, of illusions, of attachments to people who could never steward your soul. And now that you stand whole, you're able to love without losing yourself, to connect without being consumed, to lead without begging to be chosen. There is power in how you endured. There is glory in how you refused to curse those who cursed you. And because of that posture, your next season will be marked by overflow. Not just materially, but spiritually. The kind of overflow that silences your critics without you saying a word. The kind of favor that finds you in unexpected places. The kind of peace that doesn't require explanation. And when it happens, you won't need validation. You'll simply smile, knowing that you didn't take revenge, you took the higher road, and heaven rewarded it. Let this be the moment you stop watching them back. Stop checking for signs that they still care. Stop hoping they'll realize the truth. They already know. They just don't have the strength to face it. But that's not your burden to carry. You are not the fixer of broken covenants. You are the keeper of sacred ones, and your sacredness deserves protection. Not from hate, but from distraction. And that includes anything or anyone that once tried to steal what was never theirs to claim. Chosen one, let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them wrestle with what they tried to destroy. Because the more they look, the more they'll see that what you carry was never about you being lucky. It was about you being faithful. Faithful in sorrow. Faithful in separation. Faithful when the fire came. And now, the fire is refining you, not to impress them, but to prepare you. Because what's coming is so holy, so pure, so destined, that it can only be entrusted to someone who survived what you did without turning bitter. You see, what they thought would crush you actually crowned you. What was meant to destroy you became the very platform that lifted you. This is how God works in the life of the chosen. He turns betrayal into birth, pain into purpose, and rejection into redirection. You're not where you are by accident. Every storm shaped your discernment. Every wound refined your worship. And every unanswered question became a door into divine revelation. This is why your presence disturbs them. Not because you're loud, but because your silence carries authority. And now, as you step fully into your divine alignment, let this truth settle in your spirit. They were allowed to touch the story, but not the outcome. They had access to the garden, but not to the roots. They witnessed your process, but they will never understand the price. You've paid in prayer, in obedience, in surrender. And what's being poured over your life now isn't compensation. It's covenant. A reward not for being perfect, but for remaining faithful. Even in confusion, even in loneliness, even when no one was watching, God was writing. You are now walking into a realm where imitation can't follow you, where fake connections can't breathe, where stolen mantles dissolve under the weight of real anointing. What she stole, she can no longer carry. What he abandoned, he can no longer access, because heaven has elevated you to a place where only truth can survive. And in that truth, there is peace, not the kind that comes from people returning, but the kind that comes from knowing that even in your darkest hour, you never left the light. So now, boldly declare, I am not the same. I am not waiting for closure. I am not seeking the past. I have been realigned, redefined, and rekindled by the Spirit of God. My destiny is sealed. My light is protected. My heart is whole, not because they stayed, but because he never left. This is the mark of the chosen. This is the reward of those who refuse to curse what has crushed them. And this is the fire they cannot extinguish, no matter how long they watch. If this message has found you in the midst of your healing, also write the number 999 in the comments now to declare to the universe that you are no longer bound by what has broken me, that you will move forward free from all bondage. If you enjoyed this message, also like the video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next revelation. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who supports us through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps us improve our videos every day and always offer the best content. If you want to support us, the link is in the first pinned comment. And if you are ready to go even deeper, I invite you to watch the video indicated on the screen or follow our playlist. Each episode was created to guide you even deeper into your essence. See you in the next revelation. Thank you for following us, and may God bless you.